One of the nemesis of keyguards is a screen protector. And the reason it's a nemesis is because they're designed in such a way to fit really close to the edge of the screen. So any keyguard you create has really thin edges on it. And she said, well, what if you have this ability to create manual slide-in tabs of various widths and shapes? And what if you created a slide-in tab that replicated this little shelf here? Could you then take your keyguard and make it a screen protector? And I thought, well, if I made a few code changes, yes, I could. And that's what this is. So this is a keyguard with a lip, just using the manual slide-in tabs. So they're very thin. And I just attached some clear plastic to the back, okay, with spray-on adhesive. And then, again, if you can live with the fact that you've got one layout and that's it, then you've got a very, very secure keyguard here with a nice thick edge. So it's very strong. And it didn't cost you any more than a keyguard did. Plus that plastic, but it works really well. I thought, oh my goodness, I'm going to have to come up with some clear plastic that somehow conducts capacitance, because that's what the screen is expecting from your fingers. But just having your fingers near enough the screen is really all it takes to invoke the behavior. But I thought, man, I have always been struggling to solve the screen protector problem, and she came up with the idea.
Nice.
So again, just really cool ideas that other people have if you create the channel for them to give them to you.
Well, and sometimes what I love about it is we look at the problem like, okay, key guards, how do I, this and this, and somebody else just comes in from a different angle and says, what about this? I feel like that is 90% of the creativity is just coming at the problem from a different angle. And, like, well, why can't we just do this? And that's what she did. It's awesome.
Right. So at the same time, I just got a suggestion this morning for the key guards for Chromebooks, saying, boy, it'd be great if there were a way to split this key guard in half so that I could print it on or print it twice. So my printer's too small. So if you split it in half, I'll join the pieces later. And I'm going to get back to this person and say, yeah, but how are you going to join it? Because Chromebook key guards, first of all, are very thin, and they're just these tiny protrusions. You're gonna slice this thing, and all it's going to have these little points.
Right.
How do you join those? So I don't think there is going to be a great solution to that.
Right, because even if it was tiny, tiny magnets, they would be so small they wouldn't hold.
And it would be so much work to create such a thing.
Yeah.
You would just buy one, if assuming something like that existed, or you'd have it laser cut, but laser cut has some really huge issues for Chromebook key guards.
Right, but couldn't you just print it on a bigger bed?
Yeah, but you got to find the bigger bed.
Right, but it somehow seems that would be easier than finding a way to connect.
Yeah, the fact that there is no good way to do it, it says, yeah, you just have to, unless somebody's coming up with some creative idea I can't think of.
It would almost be a third piece, two halves, and then a piece that would connect them.
Right, or you don't join them at all. You just lay them in place.
Right.
Don't expect to join them, and things may be a little bit wobbly for those keys where the points come together, but maybe everywhere else it'll be fine.
Yeah, if they're stable enough on the sides.
Yeah. So maybe I spoke too soon.
Maybe anyway. You're overthinking it.
Yes. But again, interesting ideas never would have occurred to me. I have a 300 by 300 millimeter build plate on one of my printers, and I can, by turning it diagonally, I can print usually for a Chromebook.
Huh. Huh.
You
Well,
just need to find a library or a university that has a bigger
Right.
plate.
They may be out there.
yeah. Well, I guess at this point, I will say hello, everybody, and thanks for joining us today for our roundtable. It's good to see you all, or see most of you, and maybe after lunch we'll see the others of you. But we are here just to discuss whatever is on folks' minds. I started by asking Ken, what's going on? What's been keeping you busy? So we had the discussion, early discussion about keyguards. But this is pretty open. If anyone has anything they want to talk about, and feel free to unmute yourself through the whole thing, unless you have a lot of background noise. This is, we're
And Scott, I do have one more thing to ask people if no one else has anything.
yeah, well, go ahead and jump in then, Ken.
Let me go grab this. So I have, the other thing I've been jumping around is, and I showed you these things before. So these are 3D printed tactile symbols using Bliss Symbolics. Oops, there you are. And so there are people who will say, yeah, but I don't want to do a 3D printed approach. Is there a more crafty way to do it? And so I thought about it. What is a decent thing to start with to build up the shape? And I tried a foam board, but it's really hard to cut nicely. So I spoke to a person who does tactile symbols in general, very crafty person. And she said, well, you can use this polymer clay, which isn't clay at all. It's a plastic polymer. And Fimo is one of the brands, and Sculpey, I think maybe the other one.
Sculpey.
Yeah, I can't remember where my camera is. So this is Fimo, and what I did is I 3D printed a cookie cutter shape that allows me to press in 2 lines here, like on the actual object. Damn, the actual object. I keep thinking it's the center of my screen, but it's not. But I can't get, there's no way this is going to be strong enough. So I can just go like this, and well, it's bending a bit, which is probably good, but I'm not sure I even want all that bend in it. I watched Therese Wilcombe workshop yesterday, and she, just as part of the workshop, was using Instamorph, which is ungodly expensive, but
the more you buy, the less expensive it is.
Is that the more you buy, the less expensive? I didn't learn that in math, but
Volume.
Oh, okay. I see the more volume, the bigger bag you buy. I get it. Okay. So I bought a little bag because I want to just do proof of concept. But so I'm going to try that as well to see if I can come up with a material that lets me produce this. But once you get the base done, then you're still stuck with, how do I make the little raised shape?
And what I will say about Instamorph is Instamorph won't mold as well as your clay, as your sculpting.
Even if I have my cookie cutter?
It's not that, as in my experience, it is not that it's not that easy. Like it does kind of good messy shapes. It'll lock in something, but I don't know if somebody else has made neat things with it, do speak up, but I find it kind of not the edges that you'll be wanting.
Interesting. she kind of thought you could use a cookie cutter on it. And again, I can 3D print a cookie cutter in this shape. And
You could try it.
So yeah, I was hoping, but if I can replicate the overall shape with the embedded lines, I still am not sure what to use to create the raised shape. So I've experimented with hot glue, which is, you got to have talent to create a regular shape with hot glue, because you're constantly squeezing more out or less out than you want. And I've used fabric paint.
That's what I was thinking.
And it's similar problems. You got to have a real steady hand and squeeze the bottle real steadily as you're trying to get a constant. But I'm also, I don't know, I'm almost at the point where I want to say, hey, get a 3D printer.
Right.
It's less expensive to produce that piece than any of these crafts. So Fimo, this Fimo clay is, that costs $1 just to do this piece. Now, I haven't bought it in bulk, Scout. Or maybe that would have saved me some money, but costs 30 cents to print this. It's $1 just to do the base of this.
It costs 30 cents to print after you spend, you know, the chunk of change on the printer and the learning.
Yes, but you already made up all that money in Keyguard, so don't worry about it. So yeah, if you paint or fabric paint and hot glue.
So why, I know the symbols are a wide variety of shapes, but could you not make them out of more Fimo?
I guess I'm not sure how you would do that, other than try to like roll little rods and then shape them and cut them and put, because this eye shape has a little dot in the center.
Yeah. And it might come off.
Yeah, I don't know how well Fimo sticks to Fimo.
Yeah. My Fimo days are far behind me. I don't know either.
Okay.
You know, I appreciate
kids.
yeah, I appreciate there are a lot of us who try to do more with 3D printing than we probably ought to, and that it's not appropriate for every application. And I can appreciate that some people might want other ways of doing the same thing, but boy, that is the exact right application for 3D printing. And I don't know what would be better.
Yeah.
Well, I discovered a lot of interesting technologies along the way, materials, but in every case, it was a dead end, or at least has been to this point.
So I have never worked with these before, and I don't know kind of the expected tactile properties. But the other thing, the closest thing I've used to what you described is like Suguru. But with that or Instamorph, they're going to feel very different. They're going to have that flex, that bend. If you're using multiple materials, then you've got to adhere it in a way that it's not going to rub or be broken off. Printing it allows you to even make it as a solid piece, which is going to really help with the durability of it.
So I haven't bought a little bag, Instamorph. I hope this is enough. It cost me like $11, just this little bag. But I was under the impression this solidifies rigid.
It does.
Is it so bendy when it's done?
Let me find something. So this is, Ken, the clip that you tried, and actually both of you, Ken and Bill.
Oh, you didn't tell me about Bill.
Yeah, yes, because Bill is close.
Oh, okay.
So I went to his house to pick up the two that he made, which I keep handy. So this has some, I can bend it a little bit, but it's pretty long. But this isn't super thick. So
That's cool. I mean, that's a 3D print would do the same thing.
right. This is well, yeah, it has a little bit more bend this way, but a little less torque bend.
So this size, it would be pretty rigid.
Oh yeah, that would be rock solid 3D
Yeah.
printed. Or well, out of either
No.
material, that would be rock solid.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the Sugru is interesting, also very expensive, like per ounce, I think. And it would stick because Sugru is moldable glue. But again, impractical. You have to make every shape, like little worms and whatnot.
And the finish on that is real tacky. It almost feels more like clay when it's finished, which not a bad thing.
I was gonna say I kind of like, but
yeah. Oh yeah.
But it might be off-putting to these individuals.
Yeah, that's where I say I don't really know what the expected properties of it are. If it's it all feels like one solid cohesive piece, it's going to feel different if you make it out of those different materials.
Yeah. So I have Sugru. I have a charging cable that every time I have leftover Sugru, I just put it on. The whole thing is chewed up. But it's flexible and it adheres.
Okay.
I've got a little bit of everything everywhere, apparently.
In the strangest places.
Yeah. You just never know when you're gonna need your car.
What I hear, Scott, is the one thing you don't have is a replacement charging cable. And just from a safety perspective, maybe you need one.
I have one at home. Yeah, I've got some electrical tape on one end. It's fine.
All right, thanks for the suggestions.
Yeah, but I agree with Bill. It does sound like that you're going to be hard pressed to find something better than the 3D printer for this application. So I was just going to take a quick moment. So of course I don't have the 3D printer yet. So I, make all my stuff out of random things. So I made a box. So the dice spinners that are put together with little motors and 3D printed things. I have one of those, but I wanted, I made a dice tumbler. So it just, shoebox style, and made it out of the yard sign, the corrugated plastic with a lid. So you throw your dice in the top. It's got a little angled piece down at the bottom so that they tumble out into here. And I just thought that was so very fun. For kids that would throw stuff all over the room, instead they have a target area. So that's one of my latest fun things that I didn't 3D print.
Well, I wonder if you could create a big long ramp with some crossbars in there that would just be enough to cause the dice to continue to tumble. So rather than just slide. And so someone could put something at the top and it would tumble all the way down, and then you'd have a value at the bottom, rather than trying to drop it in from the top without anything in the front to keep it from flying directly out.
Well, I have something in the front.
Okay.
So I just have a clear plastic.
Okay.
So it's open at the bottom here. But I wanted it to be seen going down. So I didn't put a closed front. But yeah, you could make the ramp. The thing about this is you could put it away and it all is the shoebox style. So you could probably do that with a ramp, but it would be harder to enclose. So this is just enclosed.
I just like lots of show. So the bigger the show, the better. The longer the roll, the better. The more noise it makes.
Yeah, well, I thought this was pretty big. I'm like, I made a prototype and I made it smaller, and it was hard to get the little wedges in there properly. And so I'm like, well, I go bigger. So I did. So I know you're all going to want to do that.
Did you save your measurements in your diagrams?
You already know the answer, right? That's why you asked.
I can measure.
Just curious.
The first time somebody wants to make one, I will have measurements.
Well said.
It was 14 inches tall. I do remember that, which I just thought was kind of outrageously long. So what have other people been up to? Bill, what's going on? What's going on with your students who are 3D printing?
So I actually just met with a bunch of OT students who are learning. They're kind of working through a training module we have. Kyle Ann Rasmussen on the call is a PhD student here. She's an occupational therapist. The main thing we've been working on, I don't know is quite ready to show off, is not any one device. It's trying to build out our referral system. So right now we're based at the University of Missouri. Either Kyle Ann or myself goes to the ALS clinic here in Columbia. We are at every ALS clinic instance, and we make custom devices if people need custom devices. We also know that the outpatient therapy center affiliated with that and our children's therapy center both want to be able to request devices. And we've done just real ad hoc requests when somebody contacts us and says, hey, could you make we figure it out or not. We try to. We're trying to create a streamlined version that will make it easier for them to make requests, know what types of things we have available by linking to our Thingiverse page. And then also, because Kyle Ann and I both are really focused on the research side of it, collect outcomes from folks after they get the devices. Kevin Christensen with Intermountain Health in Utah was at the AOTA conference where we sat down and he walked me through the process they use for their loan library that they have built out really nicely in Microsoft Teams, which conveniently we use here to try to automate a lot of that. So we're working on building out that process now. Hopefully a month from now, we'll have something ready to show for that because we're going to try to roll it out in about that time. The main device that we've been getting a lot of requests for lately is not one that we designed at all, but someone found that a high school student outside of Detroit came up with, which is a simple milk carton holder for children in schools that are having difficulty opening milk cartons. I think in the original instance for a child with CP, an OT in a school district here in Missouri found that, tagged us in a Facebook post. And so that opened the floodgates for requests. So we've sent out 13 of those in the last couple of weeks.
So this is the little paper cartons?
Yeah. Kylie, I think there's one there in the lab still on the table, if you don't mind. She actually sent me a direct message saying the internet connection in that room is terrible and not to call on her for anything. But this thing sits on a sheet of Dyson on a table, and the square hole in the middle is the right dimensions for a square milk carton. And that has the little handles that a child can put their hand in. The original file, those handles went kind of all the way across the top, almost like the handle on a mug. But I didn't trust our enders, our 3D printers, to do that bridge. So I actually just modified it and cut that top bridge out. So it just has the bottom segments of the handles. So
Kyle Ann, do you mind holding that up again and showing us?
Yeah, show us how your hand sits in there.
Yeah.
So yeah. So one hand, the hand that the child doesn't have as much dexterity or strength in can sit down in any one of those slots. And then you can use the other hand, the more flexible and strong hand, to open the milk carton. So keeping it in place. I can't show you because
Bill, what does it have four? Why does it have four of those handles since it's
good question.
Rotated in space?
Yeah. Good question. That was the original design came that way and we didn't bother to lop it off. I suspect, I don't know, I could guess, but I don't know.
It just seems, I guess you could put your hands like this, two hands, but with that post sticking up, it just seems like a safety issue for one.
Yeah.
I
So
would
that's
never have more than two.
Right,
Right.
that's what I would think.
Because then you get hit in the chin. I don't know. It just seems dangerous.
that's a fair point. And I hadn't really thought about that part of it. The first two are already being used, and that OT has sent us a couple of videos back. I think she shows a little bit too much face that I don't feel comfortable sharing it. And for that child, for those two children, it was a really good fit. Worked beautifully, but it's a fair point. We could certainly, at the very least, round off the tops of those. I think all of the corners on it are pretty sharp, which I don't really care for. But yeah.
It's something that would be really easy to model because it has a very simple shape. But
Yep.
Yeah, also, it seemed to me, it seemed to me like the distance between the cup holder and the uprights is quite wide for little hands, especially. If you brought those in a bit, like granted, you'd have to model this yourself now. If you brought those in a little bit, then I'm sure your printer could bridge that distance.
Yeah, and realistically, it probably could, as is. I know our Prusa could. I don't trust our Enders to be able to do it. I don't know if you can tell from seeing it there. There are at least two different distances in there. Some of those handles are wider than others, so you can orient it to whichever one is going to be best for each kid.
That's why there's so many.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's 4 different distances, though. I think it's only 2. And so Ken's point is still true. You could get away with 2 different distances as long as you orient it well on the table. I suspect from reading descriptions of how the original creators intended it and used it, there were some instances where the kids actually used those handles to then pick up the carton as well and drink from. Some used it just for opening, some used it for opening and holding, in which case they wanted multiple handles. But then still, you think, yeah, there's that one under the chin that's potentially problematic.
And again, it's not a huge issue if you're bridging as
Right.
opposed to a post.
It's still in the way, but
Yeah.
yeah.
And at least I don't know how you lift if you don't cover those distances with a bridge.
Right. And we were not intending for it to be used to lift.
That's why you're
unless
calling
you-
it an opener.
Right. Unless.
Well,
different
they're
device,
using
but
the
similar.
posts as handles. Yeah.
Right.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. You couldn't
Then you
lift
want to
this
round
way,
them
but
and everything else.
right.
No, I could see, I mean, you might have I would think you would have 2 designs. So the 2 posts are, you either get the near posts or the further set posts. That way you just have the 2 and they could hold them or use them as the handles.
Yep. Totally agreed. And they do have different variations on this too, that have, they also did one that has 2 different sized rectangles within there so that one can also hold like the rectangular cereal box thing.
So I don't know if you saw Lori's comment.
I'm seeing it right now.
Yeah, so anybody who doesn't have their chat up, if the milk lands in a different way, you don't have to get it out and reposition to have 2 handles. So that's why she's saying it's helpful to have 4.
Yep. Great points, Lori. That and with
Yeah.
the open handle design, it can be an arm and not just a hand. Absolutely right.
Mhm. Yeah, and that's what I was thinking. If they, have clenched fists, that it might be wide enough to, put the arm in or even the fist in. So yeah, interesting. It's cool. And I would think that, I mean, I guess holding it is one thing, but also there's still the little like pull it apart and then push it back and pull it open to get the little
Right.
opening. That
And
seems
so-
like it would be tough.
And so actually that's the other reason why 4 arms are so important on this thing. It sits on Dyson, which prevents it from sliding, but having that arm in the back and in all directions prevents it from tipping in any direction.
Oh, right.
It gives you it gives you a little bit more stability. It gives it more surface area to stick to the dice and prevents it from tipping in any direction. I hadn't really thought about how crucial that is to it working.
Well, when I was a kid, that process of opening that thing up and pushing it forward, I always thought that has got to be one of the worst designs ever
Right.
created by mankind. And that makes me think maybe the design here you should look for a whole different way to open that thing, like punch a hole. You punch a hole, you stick in a straw. And now, so how do you best punch a hole that's the size of a straw? I would have loved to have had that, because the tear and push it back and no, it's sticking too much. I got to pull it apart to get it up. What a pain. That's why
straws are
now
a less desirable object.
Yeah, and Lori is exactly right. Actually, the first school that this went to, I could, if I were to propose anything sharp or pokey, it would not make it into the room. In fact, the OTs had to get approval to even take this device into the room to make sure it was safe. This particular school, a lot of their kids have some pretty intense behavioral issues that they're trying to work through.
Yeah, but it does. I mean, when you said it was for milk cartons, that was my first thought, is like, oh, that opening process that is difficult.
It's terrible. Yeah, and oh yeah, don't get me wrong, for a different classroom, for a different setting, another way of getting, gosh, now I'm starting to try to think through the biomechanics of essentially a hand-mounted single claw that you could just kind of frunk and slice that open would be really helpful. That would also be really nice in a fight, though.
I was just gonna say, yeah, get me one just in case. No. Huh? Yeah, I can see that there wouldn't be too many schools that would want that particular hole punching device.
Liability, schmiability. I was going to say I included a release. I didn't include a release. Well, we'll deal with that when it happens.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's kind of cool. It's kind of fun to think through a new device, and it's great that a kid came up with it.
Yeah. So that was the other thing. This was it was either a high school or junior high that had a design class where they were challenged to come up with something. They were paired with a younger student in their own school district who had some sort of disabling condition, and they were challenged to come up with something that made their life better. And so as part of that, the school was willing to open source the design, gave us the STL files, gave us permission to share the STL files, which I then sent along to these same schools and said, hey, if you have local high school maker groups that can do this, it'll be a whole lot, excuse me, it costs us more to ship them than it does to make them. You can have them made there for next to nothing, for $1 or $2 a piece.
Right.
So we'll see what they do with it.
Yeah. It's very cool.
So now I'm just trying to think of all the ways you could shield the pointer that punches the hole. And that's a separate step to actually push that in, and it returns back into the shield, so that you really can't use it as a weapon. It's not exposed except for punching, and then immediately returns back into its shield.
Yeah.
You'd have to have some pretty good dexterity to use it as a weapon.
But wouldn't you also have to have that same dexterity to use it?
Well, not if it's a push and release kind of thing. So you'd have to hold it down to expose this punch. I don't know. I just hate to. I always prefer to say, don't be held in place by the way things are typically done.
Right.
Is there a more efficient way? And can I look at a typical juice box and see how they've already solved this problem? I'm surprised milk carton makers haven't added a similar little opening with a aluminum foil shield on it, so you can just punch a straw through.
I think it is the straw issue. That would be my guess.
Oh, the straw is a concern.
Oh, I assume it's that the cost differential of just making it out of straight paperboard versus putting that tiny sliver of foil is probably on the order of 0.00001
that's
cents
it.
per carton. And when you make
explains it.
billions of cartons,
Yes. So it adds up to like $1.
exactly.
Yeah, I don't know.
Oh,
Because
and
use
then you
bucks
have the added cost of a straw with everyone.
and the extra trash. And yeah, you'd probably have less kids that, I was going to say kids need help with the straw, but probably more kids need help opening the paper milk carton.
And can you imagine, do you also, once you struggle to get that little thing open and point it, instead of kind of flat and stuck on one side, now you got to drink out of that. And drinking out of that little pointed thing is also a challenge.
And a lot of kids are probably already using straws for that.
Right. Right. So you open, you stick the straw in. In fact, that'd be interesting to ask your instructors, do they end up still sticking a straw in the opening?
Good question. I can only comment on the one that they already sent me a video of. And that is a no. That kid drank straight from the carton. And I will say was over the moon because it was the first time in school that they were able to open and use the milk carton on their own at all. So I mean, the child and the OT both were just ecstatic. So that was
too bad
nice.
you can't make it out of paper and make it like those those vegetable or fruit and vegetable squeeze packs that little kids you eat out of now. I think those are like, you just suck on them.
Like Go-Gurt?
No, not like that. These have plastic caps.
Oh,
They're a pouch. I don't know.
okay. Like on the space station or something.
Yeah. Is Lori
think
grabbing
that-
one right now?
I think that you.
Oh,
Yes.
Yes.
okay.
Oh my gosh. Yes. That I do not have laying around my office, but look, Lori does. That's great. Yeah, I think that squeezy design seems really easy for kids, but a lot of disposable. Well, I don't know.
Yeah, not just for
Not
kids
just for
anymore.
kids anymore. Yeah, right. They seem perfect in a lot of ways, except you still have that plastic cap you have to get off.
Right.
And so okay, sorry, just to continue down this rabbit hole, there are a couple of different brands of those, and I know my kids love the applesauce ones. And yes, exactly, Lori. One of them is designed that actually has wings on the cap, and that one, neither of my kids could open the other ones, but the ones that have wings on them, yep, exactly.
Wow.
Go squeeze. That's the one that my entire family can open.
So the problem is not with the product or this particular milk carton, how you open it. The problem is with the supplier. You got to find a supplier who provides an accessible product. Yeah, so
Yes.
it ain't gonna happen.
Yeah, right. They're one of those two things that I can do from here.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is interesting that milk cartons haven't changed well since since we were in school. Yeah. Huh. What is Parma-Life milk? Is that
Laura, you got a link for that Parma-Life milk?
Oh, she's finding the link. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Is it Parmalat that has like the screw-on plastic lid?
Is it still squeezable, like a flexible container? Do you know, Bill?
I just pulled it up. It looks like the same kind of container that we get chicken broth or beef broth in, where it's a paper carton, not squeezable, but with a plastic screw lid. Is that the right one that I posted in the chat?
Soy milk. That's my, like,
But the picture of the container is, if you scroll down to the bottom of the page, you can see the container pouring, if that's the right one.
right, but isn't that the same, like soy milk would come in, or oat milk or whatever? Yeah. In my house, that's what it was.
Yeah, I'm sure this is all about the least cost source for milk for
Sure.
the school district.
Absolutely.
And
papers.
contractors they've had for decades.
You know, I might have one other thing to show. It's not quite ready for a show and tell, but I can show you a poster, if I can get the darned image to load on it, that a group of engineering students has been working on. But if others have other stuff, I will wait. I'll take turns.
Catherine?
I have
Yeah.
I have something if you want to see what I have. I can't, and I'll have to see if I can. Yeah, oh, okay. All right. We had an OT who was doing virtual therapy for our virtual academy. I work for a school system outside of Richmond, Virginia. And she came to me and she said, I can't see the kids' hands to see if they're doing what they need to be doing. She said, I want another device. And it was like, no, sorry. one to one, and that's it. So it came to me one night, I don't know, sleepless night. I came up with an idea for a little reflector that goes over your camera lens. And my son, we're both we're an engineering family. So he's an engineering student, and I happen to have a 3D printer in my living room right now. Doesn't everyone? He drew it up and then made it. And so they put it over the camera. Wow. And then they can see the hands of the student. And in writing activities, I just said, put a binder over it and they can see, the student doing writing activities too. So we handed these out to some of our staff and the kids, and now they can kind of see one another. So doing that.
How do you get the reflection? What's the reflective surface?
It's I went to the Dollar Tree, and this is actually like this is off of a reflective phone cover that I just cut it up and stuck it on. But then we bought, for the mass production, we went ahead and bought from Amazon. You can buy little mirror sheets that they're adhesive. So you just stick them on underneath. And it was pretty easy and simple to do. And we did have our high school kind of mass produce a whole bunch. Not that my son wouldn't like to produce 22 of them or 30 of them, but it just seemed more reasonable to get our own school system to do it.
That's very clever.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, it was a fun thing to do.
That's brilliant.
So is this something you're putting on Instructables or someplace for people?
I guess I can. Yeah, I didn't know if there's a need for that,
Clearly.
or not. But it's a pretty easy, design to do.
I think you should.
Okay. I can do that.
I can't tell you how many times over the past couple of years I've had to reach up and try to put my camera on a mount pointing down at the desk, not just for keyboarding, but for other stuff that I was working on, trying to show us some sort of manual technique. That would be really, really helpful. Right. I wonder if you could consider doing a few, and I'm sure you tried different angles of that reflection. If you're trying to show a larger workspace, maybe a larger mirror at a slightly shallower angle, you could show an entire desk.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How cool.
It's pretty simple. The only catch is we use Microsoft Teams, and it's actually the reverse. And I've had to figure out a kind of a workaround because the keyboard is reversed then. And so, from the student to the teacher, from the teacher's perspective, they can pretty much kind of wrap their brains around it a little easier. But if you go the other way, it's a little harder. So we've talked about, if you pin yourself, the picture of yourself, then that is, and then project that, I think it comes out right, if that makes sense. But that's the only thing. Teams hasn't come along with a, project that that correct image. It's always it's reversed right now. So
But don't the webcams themselves provide that feature of reversing the image?
not our laptops.
Oh, the
We don't have
laptop
it.
So this
Yeah,
is
it's
the
the camera that's
laptop.
built in.
It's not going on a webcam, it's going on a laptop.
Yeah,
I
it's either a laptop or a Chromebook
Okay.
that we're using. The Chromebooks for the younger kids and the laptops are for the secondary. So
Right,
those
so-
cameras don't have that capability.
And for different, like I have a external camera, so the thickness would probably need to be a little different, but
Right.
Right.
you just get somebody who modifies the design, and
Yeah, it's pretty easy to modify, any part of it as far as the width of the device, or if you wanted, like you said, to make it a longer piece, you can certainly do that too, to see more of the surface area.
So just to be clear, you're saying the Chromebook camera doesn't allow you to flip it horizontally.
Not ours, no.
What model do you guys use?
It's a Dell. I'm not sure what model it
Dell
is though,
something
right up.
Chromebook. Okay.
And
And
I didn't
same-
think about, oh, go ahead, sorry.
And same is true for what
Yeah.
laptop? What laptops are you using?
We're using Dell laptops too, but AT is different from IT.
Sure. Just curious.
hmm
That
So I
seems
do
odd, 'cause
wonder-
that's usually one of the first things that they build into projection is to flip horizontally, because otherwise things just look weird.
Right.
And I know that you are right that Teams does not, or at least did not have that functionality, but in some versions of it, it does now. And I only know that because I helped my wife set up for her first ever Teams video call on Monday. And we actually, there was a flip that she was able to activate, but I know that it was not there even a year ago when I tried to do the
Yeah,
same thing. And it might not be
is
there for
a
the
new-
Chromebook version.
You're right. It is new, and it does flip it, but it only flips it from what I can understand. And I've tried like experimenting with other people. It flips it only for the person, only for me. So it flips it for me, but it doesn't flip it for the person on the other end.
Well, that doesn't make any sense.
I thought it was
Yeah.
totally useless as well.
Yeah.
I didn't. It's not even worth saying that you have that when it's
Right.
not flipping it for the viewer.
for the other
Right.
person.
Yeah.
You're right,
Yeah.
though. I forgot about that. So when they did introduce it, when I've used it on my version of Teams, I totally saw that.
Yeah.
I forgot all about it. You're right.
It's completely useless, and I don't know why they even put that in as a feature, because it doesn't help the people on the other end.
Yeah.
So yeah, for now, I think just having them pin themselves and then presenting seems to work correctly. It just is a few more steps, and I'd like most people to have to go through.
Yeah, but it's good to have a way to get it done. So you've got that. And
Yeah.
it's a very cool, like it looks very simple, straightforward. I'm curious if the mirrored stuff you bought on Amazon came in like, refrigerator magnet size, or did you cut it up?
You can buy whatever size sheets. We bought I think it was like 8x9 or like 11x8 or something like that.
Okay.
And then cut it
Okay.
up.
Yeah, I just wasn't
So-
sure if you had cut it, if that was a doable thing.
Yeah, I mean, it was easy because they're very flexible. A lot of people will say, well, if you buy certain ones, I mean, the more money you pay, the better the reflection is going to be. But for our purposes, it didn't have to be perfect,
You're not checking gemstones, you're hand position.
Right. Right. It just needs to be simple and quick and easy.
Exactly. And it looks like you got it done. That's very cool.
Yeah,
Thanks for sharing that. And
sure.
then, Bill, did you get your other thing pulled up? Because we are getting close to time, actually.
I'll do the quick version of this. And then hopefully next month we'll have something like ready to show the real deal. It's probably in pieces on the floor behind Kylan somewhere, but let's not try that. So I'm going to share what hopefully popped up is a PDF of a poster. So the need here in I mentioned our ALS clinic, being in central Missouri, no surprise, we have a lot of people who want to fish and who struggle with fishing for various reasons. So some can cast but can't reel, some can reel but not cast. Nobody can successfully hook bait, but that's another issue. And so we had a handful of people, no pun intended, come to us and say, I need a device that will make it so I can cast and or reel. So I was fortunate enough to be able to mentor an engineering capstone group here at the university. So these are all biomedical engineering students that came up with a pretty nice design, and darn it if this picture isn't going to display. There we go. Which is, like I said, is currently in pieces, to make a motorized rod with a spring built inside that almost works like a cross between a fishing rod and a harpoon gun. The motor, which is mounted on the back here, the real brilliance and elegance of what they did is they figured out a way to do this all with a single stepper motor, as opposed to multiple mechanisms. So the long rod you see across the top there, I don't know if you can see my mouse as I'm doing this, is PVC with a 3D printed end cap on it, 3D printed motor mount, and spool. The motor, they have a single switch, a single momentary switch that when you press it sequences through a couple of different steps. The first step is to slowly retract and draw back the line. So the spool turns, pulls the line back in toward the spool against the spring, loads the spring. And then the next press releases and actually spins the spool at the right speed to match what the spring is doing, forcing out the line. So it essentially seems like just a ballistic release, so that spring fires the line out. They have it calculated, they haven't tested yet, that it's something like a 20-meter cast on this first trial. And then the third press of the button will begin to reel in. Down the road, what they want to see is if it actually meets any resistance, and if it doesn't, then stop reeling. So because they're interested in whether you're fighting a fish, and if you start to reel in, there's nothing there, it potentially will stop on its own. But if it senses any resistance, then it reels in at kind of a medium speed to a predefined stopping point. It's all mountable. The C clamp here, that was just an idea they had early on. They've actually got a proper mount now. And they've got their prototype more or less ready, just a few more tweaks on the software behind that button. And we're working on IRB approval to get to testing here. And we're hoping within the next 2 weeks, we're actually going to start trying this thing out on the water.
That's very interesting. I am interested in, I don't fish, but the reeling it in, I almost think like a separate switch, so that when you are activating the switch, it pulls in, and when you let go, what's that called, latch or something?
Yeah, yeah.
That way it could stop wherever you want.
Yep. And so actually, that's an interesting point. So it's, like I said, it's a momentary switch, just like an AbleNet, a big red. And it could be set that after the release sequence, then from then on, any press, no matter the duration, is reeling back in at that slow speed. And the stepper motor can tell how far it has essentially reeled. So that could go until it's reached a predefined distance. Once the weight and the hook are near that tip, now any subsequent presses, maybe it'll beep once at you, and any subsequent presses will do the full loading. So yeah, that's totally doable. That's a great idea.
So I remember seeing, probably in some YouTube channel, an alternative approach here, which is just simply to use a radio controlled boat to carry your line out, and then you can maneuver wherever you want and it'll drop it and leave. The reeling back in becomes a separate problem, unless you can have that boat go out and grab the line. I don't know, but just it solves the problem of placing the lure, or
Yep.
placing the bobber in quite a manageable way.
Absolutely, for most people, but that was part of the issue with this ALS clientele. For some of them, it's because of shoulder weakness. For a lot of them, it's because they don't have the hand control to even work a reel. So even like the dial on a radio controlled or even the thumbstick might be difficult. We're going for single button press to do the entire thing. But I agree with you. That's a great solution.
So there still is, you still have to direct the rod somehow left to right or something, or change its angle.
Yep.
And how are you doing that with a button?
That is not done with the button. So that part, the mount they have is pretty easy to adjust. It's not going to work for everyone. And it doesn't solve the hooking bait or the taking the fish off the line. So it doesn't solve every step of the way, for sure.
And I just wish people would be more open to power bait, because that'll solve your problem of getting the bait on the hook. You don't have to use a worm. That is a real struggle to put some live bait on. But if you just use power bait, you do that with just a masher.
So I started to agree because
power bait's just, it's like a very soft little clay.
Oh, okay.
A variety of colors, and includes, you can even get sparkles in it, and that's what most people that and salmon eggs are what most people fish with. They don't fish with worms or grubs or minnows or whatever.
Although early on, that was one of our first, problems we came across, like a young woman who wanted to.
She wanted a worm. She didn't want
a
power bait.
worm. She knew what she was after, and in her lake, that's what was going. So that was our original device, which was called the worm hooker.
I love it. I don't fish at all myself, so it was a nice fluke that we have a group of 3 BME students, all of whom are active fishermen and women that love the sport. Like when I had my very first meeting with them, they came at me with so many questions that I didn't even like, not just what type of fish. I'm like, I don't know, the ones that swim in the water. Well, are they more interested in the cast, the reel, the struggle with the fish? I'm like, it's fishing, dude. I don't know. So having these people who are bright and brilliant and who know the activity, that can do the activity analysis part of it better than I as an OT can, because they know what they're talking about, was really, really nice. I think it's the only reason the project has gone as well as it has.
So we just need to get Bill and Scout out on the water.
Nah, you go ahead. I'm good.
I like the water. I'm happy to swim and jump and do all the other sorts of things. I don't need the fish.
All right.
They get to stay where they are. All right. Well, I think if I don't do it, Naomi's going to say it's noon. We didn't know what was going to happen today, and this was really fun. I want to thank you all for coming and sharing. And even though we've had some rough internet connections, I think we got it done. So I appreciate everything. And Catherine, you have Naomi's email, I'm assuming. If you put this out, will you let her know, or let any of us know? I think, like Ken said, Instructables would be a great place, but there's probably lots of other places, Thingiverse.
Yeah, I definitely will. Mm-hmm.
I think
I'll throw a plug in for Makers Making Change again.
Yep, all the places.
Okay.
Great, thanks. All right. Well, Naomi, any closing remarks? She's saying thanks everybody for sharing. So I think at this point we get to say goodbye and hopefully see many of you next